It's the Mammoth Plumber Paradox with Tyler Williams, the marketing man.
All right, Patrick, thank you for joining me on this episode. I'm really interested in what we're going to cover because I don't really know. But why don't you set the stage? Tell us a little bit about like you and what you do and sort of your history.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for having me on. First off, pleasure to be here. I am a business broker that specializes in the sale of heating and air and plumbing companies nationwide. So I was a broker for years. Kind of give you the Cliff Notes version. Broker for years, listed a heating and air company for sale. Love businesses with barriers to entry, and I live in Florida. I don't know a husband in the state of Florida dumb enough to tell his wife he's not fixing the air conditioner in the summertime. So to me, it made great business sense. So I listed a heating and air company and I bought it. Ran it for 2 years, realized I didn't belong running a heating and air company for a variety of reasons and missed the business brokerage world. So I went to sell my business. And when I did, we were a small company, under $2 million in sales. And when I did, I couldn't find any real accurate information, right? If you're doing 20 million or 30 million, people line up to help you. If you're doing $1.5 million, $2 million, $3 million, finding accurate information was challenging. And so I thought if it was hard for me as a broker to be able to find it, what about somebody who's in the trenches every day, right? Somebody working in the business that has never done anything with business brokerage. So my son and daughter-in-law actually bought my company. Been a little over 6 years now that they've been running it. And at the time, I decided to switch my business to just helping the trades. And I'm based in Florida, as I mentioned. We started in Florida, then Florida, Georgia, then Southeast, then expanded nationwide. And the farthest I've sold has been Alaska, which we'll probably talk about.
Yep.
And so since that time, I've been fortunate as of this week to help 148 people get across the finish line.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, and so, okay, let me give people the context of how you and I connected. So Prospector Plumbing in Fairbanks, Alaska was created and owned by my brother, Jared Williams. And you got connected with him somehow and you helped him sell. And he's the one who put you on my radar. And so I obviously, the nepotism discount, he got a lot of marketing help real early. So, but, and I saw what was interesting with Jared was it was the first time that I saw a company go from inception to sale. Like I had always, marketing companies often come in and like, a year or 3 in, if not longer for some companies, depends, but it's rare that I actually got to like ride in the carriage with somebody to build the company. And I saw Jared make a number of mental shifts. And I want to clarify that a lot of what I want to talk about is about the brain space that you end up going through, like the mental motions, not necessarily like, all the like the SOPs you need in place and things like that. All that's real tactical information. It exists. I think what a lot of people miss is there's a lot up here that has to be done too in order to prep yourself to get ready to sell. So what would you say to open that up is like, what kind of mentality do you think that people should have in the beginning that you often find they miss? Are there tells where you're like, you got to watch out for this or that?
Well, a lot of people that are specifically in the trades or in the trades, they got in the trades, didn't like their boss, got a license and went in business for themselves, right? They didn't have formal business training aside from the last guy or girl they worked for. And so they didn't like something that was going there. And so they're doing something themselves. And so a lot of them start off and it's just a job. I mean, thank goodness it's a high paying job, right? Most people in heating and air and plumbing do fairly well if they understand pricing. But it's not really a business. And so I think there's an educational curve that happens in running a business and in building a business to sell. And when people come to me, younger people typically, and say, what should I do? And I say from day one, build a business to sell, right? Most people are just not happy with their job, have this dream of being self-employed and never think of cashing the check at the end. And they spend their time focusing on how am I going to save taxes and not pay the government and running a business to save taxes and running a business to sell is 2 different businesses, right?
Oh, that's such a good point. Yes, very much so.
And the other part of it is people that are, the Dan in the van or truck in a truck kind of thing. They're making a couple $100,000 a year, which is incredible. But if they don't go to work, they don't have an income, right? I mean, any day that they're not in there, and what I preach is no one calls me and says, "Hey, I'd love to buy a business that I can work 15 hours a day in the truck and then come home and do paperwork for 6 hours." It doesn't happen. I never get that phone call. And so when I ask people, "Would you buy your business?" Often the answer is no. Why in the world would I buy this? And so I think a long answer, and I apologize for rambling on there, but I think, Tyler, a long answer is when you start, build the business to sell or that somebody would want to buy. Even if you don't ever want to sell it, running a business that's sellable is so much more fun and so much more profitable and so much nicer than running a business that you're a slave to.
So I have a bit of experience with this from buying my business, because my business, I bought marketing agency in Fairbanks, Alaska, where Prospector was, right? And bought it, and the previous owner never built it to sell. And so he didn't know how he was going to get out of it. And honestly, he hired me with the intent to sell it to me, and was pretty upfront about it. But I didn't want it. I didn't want it until I had kids, because that really changes your priorities. So, and he was going to shut down, right? And I was like, oh, I need a career. So, but I'm really interested on the mistake of building a business, like essentially for your lifestyle, right? Versus a business for that can also feed your lifestyle, but is for other people as well. So when people get focused on those early things, like saving a few more dollars on taxes, that one I'm really interested in, because yeah, a lot of people run in, they're like, I want the discount on everything. I have found through learning that doesn't really work well for selling a business. Can you tell me like what some of those fumbles are? Like, why wouldn't you want to like try and get the best deal on every little thing and squeeze every little tax dollar out that you possibly can?
Well, let's take the easy one, the math side of it. Let's say, I've been self-employed my entire adult life, so I understand being creative with accounting. So I'm not sitting here pointing fingers saying, you didn't pay your taxes, shame on you. So, but let's say you recharacterize $50,000 of profit, and you somehow make it cost of goods. You're paying for your ex-girlfriend's condo at the beach, or whatever the case may be. And you call it rent at the office. You're paying for a Porsche payment and saying it's a vehicle payment. So those expenses, and let's say it accumulates to $50,000 in a year. Well, if you're in the top tax bracket, you save what, 37% on that. So you're not saving a ton of money, but you're saving some money on taxes. Now, let's assume that you build it into a profitable business, that we're able to sell for a 3 to 5 time multiple, using that as an example. So you're saving 37% of $50,000 and giving away potentially 5 times $50,000.
Yeah.
The math never works out in your favor, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to get paid more in selling it than what you're saving in taxes, and you'd have to save taxes for years and years and years and years and years before it makes a difference on selling it.
Well, I think a lot of that, and correct me if at any point you don't agree with me on anything I say during this, but like a lot of that is playing the short game versus playing the long game.
100%.
And I think playing the long game is, I get it when you're in business, like you're impatient. That's the other interesting thing about owners. Well, me and my brother, we're impatient. Do you find that's true across the gamut?
Yeah, and I think it's a mix of impatience and needing to pay the bills today, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you the day in front of you, and you need to find who's your next customer going to be and how they're going to be taken care of. And if you hire somebody, how are you going to pay them and all of that? Many of them don't have a long-term vision of here's what I'm building, right?
Yeah.
It's just it's a daily grind as opposed to working a daily plan.
How do you think that people make that shift though? Because like a lot of them are contractors, like they're working out of a truck. It's just them. And then they decide, all right, I'm going to build a business, and they might get to the point where they hire 2 or 3 people, but then there's like a bottleneck and a pinch point where suddenly what worked doesn't work. So how would you recommend people work on that even from the early stages? Like how should they be approaching their problems?
I'm a big believer in success leaving clues. And so where I see people that have achieved great levels of success, they're getting around other people that are there. You know, the different organizations that exist, the different coaching organizations that exist. I think part of their benefit, aside from the blocking and tackling of here's how you do it, is wow, if that guy can get to $5 million, I could get to $5 million, right? Because when you're the Dan in the van and you're out fixing pipes all day long, getting to $5 million in sales is the farthest thing from your imagination for most people. And so I think going to industry events, being around other industry people, is the easiest way that I see it happen. When I sell companies for more than $5 million. Let's use that as kind of the barometer. I think every company that I've sold for over $5 million, and definitely every company that I've sold for over $10 million, has been part of some best practices organization of some type.
Yeah.
Like the
I
belief.
mean, I'm a huge fan of coaching. I didn't join an agency coaching group until 5 years in that I owned it. And it was honestly, my camera's doing weird things. That was one of the best decisions that I ever made. And I'm still a part of it today, 5 years later. Like it very quickly paid for itself, number one. And it like there's nothing like being in a room of people who are a few steps ahead of you. You learn so much. It's amazing.
Well, just not even the learning though, Tyler. I think it's the belief.
Yeah.
Right? You're working in your own box, and this is what you see all day, every day. And to think it can be different, like that, is not believable for most people.
Yeah. Well, it's also shortcuts to some degree, right? Like somebody else already solved this problem.
Absolutely. And so
Right.
to me, that's the how to do it stuff, which certainly exists. But for most, if you were, I think of a lot of the people that I sell that are doing $1 million a year in sales and they're stuck at $1 million. It's because the owner won't get out of their own way 99% of the time. That $1 million threshold, I think, is one of the hardest for them to get over because they have to become somebody different than just a technician or a plumber, and they can't. And they don't know how to do it. Well, if I gave them a script that says, "Hey, just go do this," and it'll work, 90% of them aren't going to listen to it. But if they're around somebody that says, "Hey, I was there last year. I did the exact same thing you're doing. Here's what I fixed, and now I'm doubling that or tripling that," then it becomes believable. And so I think the belief side of that is so huge, and that's where being around those organizations is so beneficial.
For myself, I've seen that. I think you're right. That holds absolute water. Like, so when I bought the business, it was one man's, like, it was his lifestyle business. It paid for his bills. He was a very frugal individual, so he would never invest money into the business. The guy who ran an advertising agency that served people statewide in Alaska didn't advertise his business at all. And when I came in, I was like, screw it, let's advertise. And so once we kind of got on our feet, started advertising, guess what? It works. So, but then, but I didn't have the vision. And it took, you're right, other people and seeing what they did, for me to go like, I can do this.
Right.
And now I had to totally change the business. Like it's a completely different business. I talked to the old owner before I left Alaska a little bit ago, and he was like, "What are you doing?" So confused. So it's
It
not
also
just
changed you, not just the business, right?
yeah,
I mean, you had to change, and I think that's what you're talking about, that headspace. You had to change in order for the business to change. And
absolutely.
and so I think once again, if somebody just gave you a book and said, "Here's how to grow your marketing business," yeah, you may have done it, you may have not. But when you're in a room with 50 people who have done it,
Yeah.
I'm an idiot for not doing it, right? I mean, here's how to do it. And so I think it's the same thing in the trades.
Well, another aspect. It's funny. I talked to Jared about this yesterday. Being an owner can be very lonely. If you don't get yourself around other people who are also trying to do what you're doing, you're going to have a hard time commiserating with the rest of the world around you, because your problems are so different, because you've put yourself in a position that is so different than most people. And so you kind of have to break out of that. And there's been times where I've had to go, "Ooh, this is advice. This person has good intentions, but I'm not going to take it. They don't have the perspective for this." And probably kept me out of some mistakes. That's after making some of them, though. So,
Those mistakes I always consider paying for an education, right?
yep.
If it costs you enough money, you'll learn from it and won't do it again.
Mhm.
And and you're right. I think your view changes when you sign the front of the check as opposed to the back of the check. And
Absolutely.
so being around other business owners, that are nut jobs like we are that decide to be self-employed, I mean, it's a unique perspective, and not everybody understands it.
So, one theory I've had about running a business is it also forces you to learn to communicate differently. Of course, the marketing guy is going to talk about communication. But I think about that in relation to, like, when you're building a business to sell, you can't be the only one who understands what you're doing. Um, how do you think people need to communicate and work forward their vision once they have it, to seed it out to the rest of the entity, so that way it follows suit with it?
Well, I think understanding what you really want. I spend a lot of time talking about building a bigger business to sell. That's not what everybody wants, right? There's some people who don't want to put in the work to build a bigger business, that they're happy being them and a helper, and that's what they want to do, and they love fixing things, and they're okay not cashing that check at the end.
Yeah.
Many of them don't realize they're not going to cash the check at the end as part of the problem. And so I think that's the issue, is understanding, am I building this to get maximum value? Or am I building this because I want to work 2 days a week? Or am I building this because I want to change the lives of everybody who works for me? Whatever that is, I think understanding that, and then making sure that everybody's that's on the boat's rowing the same direction. Because I've seen it where a lot of employees want to build this big company, and they want every software and every training, and they want all these fancy things, and the owner wants to be paper invoices and turning down work when it gets busy and not spending any money on marketing, and eventually those employees leave, right? I mean, they're not on the same team. And so I think understanding, because most business owners, I think, don't know where they're going, right? They haven't taken the time to say, here's what I'm building towards, or here's what I want to sell, or here's what I want to do.
1:25 p.m.
Sorry, that's my watch.
I think starting there then gives you the ability to make sure everybody's buying into where we're going, because you need them, right? If the ultimate goal is to sell your business and sell it for potentially top dollar, whatever that is for you, whether it's $1 million or $5 million or $10 million, whatever that figure is, you need to make sure that everybody's going to the same place and everybody's okay with that. Because the reality is, in a sale, the employers are the only people that are involved that don't have a say in it, right?
Mhm.
We don't tell the employees until the sale's completed or almost completed, to protect them most of the time, so they don't panic for no reason. But so if everybody knows where we're going, then when you walk in and say, hey, we've decided to partner up with X, Y, and Z, or I sold the business, or whatever the case is, or Jim, who's been the service manager for the last 3 years, is buying the company. We do a lot of internal buyouts, that kind of thing, that people aren't running for the door screaming because they had no clue that this was something that was going to happen at some point in time. The businesses that, when they make an announcement, hey, I haven't been here in 6 months, Jim's been here, Jim's going to keep running it, pat everybody on the back and walk out the door, they're like, yeah, we're going back to work. It's no big deal, right? That's kind of what everybody's been doing. And so it's when we're a family, and I'm never going to sell, and I hate private equity, and I hate all these things, and it's us against them. And then you come in and say, hey, I sold to a private equity company last week. Well, then there's some animosity potentially that's there.
I saw that happen not firsthand. Real estate company in Fairbanks. We went and did a big culture video back when we were doing a lot of video production, and everybody was like, hoorah, this is the best company ever. We're a family, we're a team, everything. Owner then came like 2 months later into a meeting, and somebody who used to work around that sector now works for me. And it was like, I sold the business. Everybody felt betrayed.
Right.
And it was really interesting seeing that exodus, and then seeing all the other real estate companies that started popping up from those employees after that. So I've always thought building to sell is responsible. It also forces your hand to take care of the people under you. Because then like you're working yourself out of the business while building the business, right? And then if something happens to you, there's all these safeguards in place. I imagine that the amount of safeguards you have in place also is pretty good parallel to whether or not you're viable. And so what are some things that you find that people are missing around the time when they hop on your doorstep and they're going, yeah, I want out, or I'm ready, or whatever? Like, what are some common things where you're like, you got to work on this before we can get there?
The people part, oftentimes. Let's use your example of, hey, they didn't do this or they didn't do that. I get a call. This happened twice this year. I get a call from somebody, hey, want to do a valuation of the business? I'm ready to sell. We do a valuation. They're not thrilled with what it's worth, and because they're the whole business, and as a result, is worth a lower amount of money. And they say, well, one of them said, well, I'm going to build it. I'm going to hire people. And I'll come back to you. A year later, he came back to me. It was the exact same business that it was a year before. And he said, done. I'm going to sell. And I said, okay, here's what I need. 3 days later, his wife calls me and said, hey, you were talking to my husband. And he died 2 days ago. And he was the sole license holder. He was the sole owner of the corporation. And so we need to find some way to keep the doors open to try to get it sold.
Oh my goodness.
And so that's the extreme.
Mm-hmm.
No plan in place, no people in place. He was the key that did everything. Another one, similar scenario. That one took over a year, because I talked to him a year ago. This one was this year. Calls me, want evaluation done. Great. Send him the email. Here's what we need. 3 or 4 days later, get a call from the wife. You were talking to my husband. He was filling out paperwork and he died. Thank goodness she was on the corporation. Thank goodness they had somebody that could hold the license for a period of time. So that scenario was a little bit better. But she lost all leverage from negotiating now to sell a business, that she's running a business that she doesn't know how to run.
Yeah.
Don't want to run. The employees are scared for their jobs, right? The boss just died. Now what? So that's extreme, right? I mean, that's kind of a worst case scenario, but it happens, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I'm dealing with people at retirement age, and sometimes they die at retirement age. And not have a plan in place. I've had others where, let's use the positive side, developing, training people, got a GM in place, lived somewhere else 6 months out of the year, had a major health issue, ended up in the hospital. Nobody had a clue. Business hummed right along. And he said, when he got better and got healed up, I should probably sell this thing so my wife doesn't have to deal with it. And we went to market and said, he's been in the hospital for 6 months and the income has increased and they've hired more people and numbers are all good. It's a waiting list of buyers, right? That's what they want. They want to buy a business that's not 100% dependent on one person, specifically the owner. And so that's polar opposites, right? And what the company sold for, whose husband died and had to go through probate to be able to sell it, and trying to keep employees on, and what it sold for compared to the company where he lived in another state and was gone for 6 months at a time anyways, what it sold for was night and day.
Oh, I bet.
And they were night and day to run. I mean, part of the reason potentially I think these guys may have passed is the stress on them, right? They were there all day, every day, slave to a business. The other guys in the Keys, and life's pretty good.
Yeah. I've seen that many times. Had a guy right before I moved out of Alaska, needed to get some moss off the roof, hired a guy to do it. And he was one of those. I was like, you don't have much life left in you to build this business by the time you won't be able to do this work with your own hands. And it was one of those conversations where you could see that he was focused on squeaking every penny, right? And it kept him from doing things quickly and efficiently. And so, because he asked me about marketing stuff, and I was like, well, here's this. And he's like, okay, so how can I do this as least efficiently as possible?
I think the thing we see in the trades more is most owners are perfectionists when it comes to their trade.
Oh yeah.
And so my biggest thing that I see of the guy who's been in business for 30 years and it's him and a helper and maybe an installer is nobody can do it like he can do it. Everybody's too lazy. Nobody wants to go to work. They just can't tighten that screw as well as he can tighten the screw. And so I tried people and they're all lazy and they stink and I had to fire them and everybody's on drugs and blah 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 blah. So they're just such perfectionists at their crafts that they're not great business people, right? Because at the end of the day, are they really taking the best care of their customers? Probably not, because they have to wait 2 weeks before they can even get there because they're the only guy in the company who can fix something. And so, and they don't give them options. They're not up to date on indoor air quality or better filtration or those kind of things. So the experience probably isn't as good. And so they end up hurting themselves and their business trying to be the best when they're often not.
I see that a lot in the trades as well. Years ago, we had a client who was not a plumbing company. This is before we narrowed our focus. It was a drywall company, and he was a friend of a friend sort of deal, right? My company was smaller, so I was like, yeah, we'll help out, and built him an amazing brand, kind of got him going, but then realized that he loved the artistry of good drywall, but he did not love running a business. And
Common, super common. I see that daily, and I think that's where you were talking about that mind shift, right at the beginning, where I've seen people that have grown a business just so they can just focus on the artistry, right? So they've got somebody else running the day-to-day operations, the GM in place and the operations manager, and what's their job? They do training 3 days a week, and they can take the new guy and teach them how to, check how many CFMs are coming out of a piece of ductwork or how many gallons are flowing through a pipe. And so they built the business so they could focus on what they love. But typically they never do that because they won't trust anybody else to do it. And that's the issue.
Yeah, there seems to be this concept that I'm the master and I can't make another master. And I think that's a fallacy. I do. But I really like this concept of reframing your position around I'm going to be the best trainer in the company and the company's going to run itself. Right. That's a good way to take what you want to really do. Like that deep hearted, like I want to be the artist. I work in a creative field. Of course, that happens to me. Right. But then extend it as a way to build up other artists in the field. Like,
and he had the vision that most don't, because that was his thing. He said, I had to grow big because I had to stop being the guy who was hiring and firing and buying insurance and buying new trucks, the stuff that I hated. And I could be the guy doing nothing but working with a young kid who comes in who doesn't have 20 years of bad habits. And I can show him the right way to do it and teach him the beauty of the trade. And so that's what he did. And he loved going to work. And he controlled quality. And that was his biggest concern, was quality. Well, he controlled it. Pricing, somebody else dealt with. What their uniforms looked like, somebody else dealt with. But how they sweated in a piece of copper, that was on him. And that was his badge of honor.
There's a concept that I've always taken to heart, which is hire the people who love to do the things that you don't love to do. Right. So then you can release them and they're going to get done better because of that. Like it's one thing I love about being in business is I hire out my weaknesses. I put buffers in place to keep me from screwing up myself. So, and structured the team to be that. Like I have strengths, I have weaknesses like anybody else, but I think there's a degree of self-analysis that has to happen where you have to go, this is what I'm good at and this is what I want, right? Like you said, define what you want so that way you can build for it.
Most won't get their head out of their work to do that, right? Or can't, right? Once again, it's you're growing your business and you got to go to work and you've got to do this and you have to do that and don't have a plan of kind of what you're trying to build.
Well, even with Jared and some others of our clients, like they're plumbers and they love like the craft of plumbing, right? But the minute that they get drowned in bookkeeping or admin, they're just like, oh my gosh. Myself, I hate insurance paperwork, despise it. Right now, I'm the only one who does it. That was one of my emails earlier today is to my insurance company being like, okay, let's get this straightened out. And it's one of those things, I never liked it. But when Jared hired his first CSR, and I see this throughout some of our clients too, like hiring somebody to help you on the admin side, instead of hiring another tech, sometimes frees you up to do better work and more of it. And then you're able to extend yourself further into what you're great at and let somebody else handle the other things. So I wanted to go back. We kind of touched on this just a little bit, but I wrote it down because I think it's really important. You talked about how people would be paying for all these things that were business things and that can kind of throw off your sellability, right? Because it's when somebody analyzes things, they go, nope, that's not going to apply to me when I buy it. I find this in marketing too. There's a psychological aspect to your revenue. So what we tell people is like, calculate your marketing off of a percentage, right, of your revenue, given sort of like historical averages, things like that. Just to help get them so that way they don't look at their profit and start to pull it from profit. Instead, they're pulling it from revenue.
Sure.
Is that another, like, how long do you think, like, maybe there's a benchmark for it, maybe not, but like, how long do you think somebody, as their company is growing, like they can sustain this sort of backwards thinking about the money and the psychology, where it should be like, no, the business needs money to feed itself. I'm not going to rob it of that opportunity. Like, do you find that there's certain pinch points in the business where that becomes, where it's like, okay, you got to run this like a business, stop running it like a bank?
Yeah, I see different kind of thresholds
Okay.
from a sales volume standpoint in the companies that we see. That first is that million, right? They do everything. They're responsible for everything. Up to that point, they're always in the van. They're probably answering their cell phone when customers call, that kind of thing. They're running calls on Saturday at 8 o'clock. And so they've got to get out of their own way at that first step for it to ever get past that. And they've got to bring on other people. The next one we typically see it is around 3 million, because often at 3 million, you have to bring in more layers of management.
Okay.
And so most companies, we look at it like 2.5 to 3 million are super profitable, and they get above 3 million, and then their profitability often drops. Because now they've got to invest and spend people, and then they're like, well, why am I even going to do it? I'm making less money at 3 million than I was at 2.5 million. I might as well just do 2.5 million. And then the final one we see is at 5 million. I see a lot of companies at 5 million that are super profitable because they haven't taken the leap to invest in the people and the processes and systems. So they've been able to get there by kind of sheer force. But everybody on there is working like dogs, right? Everybody's working a million hours, doing 20 different jobs. They're juggling all this stuff, and so it's constant chaos. So then when they start putting in an operations manager, a general manager, a service manager, these different layers of management, their numbers go down drastically. So you can see a company that's growing past 5 million is going to be 10 to 12% net, oftentimes, right at that point, where they were 20%. So they went from making $1 million a year to making 650.
Mm-hmm.
And then they really are questioning it. And if they don't have that plan and that belief that they're getting past that, because the reality is, if you're $1 million company, almost everybody you hire generates revenue, right? You bring in a salesperson, they generate revenue and pay for themselves. You bring in another plumber, they generate revenue and pay for themselves. You get up to that 3 and 5, but you bring in an operations manager. Well, they're an expense, right? They're not generating revenue. You bring in potentially an office manager who's dealing with more of the insurance paperwork, all that type of stuff. They're freeing you up, but they're not generating necessary revenue. Bring in an install manager. They're getting things organized and done better, but they're not immediately generating revenue. The plan with all of them is that allow you to scale once those people are in place. But when you first bring them on, it's often a step backwards. And I think people freeze. And then it's easy to justify I lost a guy. I'm not going to hire to replace him. I'm just going to do it this way, and I'll make more money anyways, kind of thing. So I don't know if that answered your question,
It
but
does.
that's the lens that I see.
Well, it does, and it makes total sense. It's also something I've experienced because I'm a service-based business too, right? When I first started hiring managers for specific departments, I was like, oh my God, I'm not making any more money. Like, did I make a terrible mistake? And I stayed the course. Things worked out. Profitability comes, recovers, and then is able to extend even farther. And that's the thing is like businesses kind of got to do surges. Um, the and what I liken it to, and this is funny because we just went over our org chart this morning with the team and talked about like we have fulfillment, we got account. It's like series of pipes. Not, I wasn't even trying to be plumber specific, but I was like, guys, we have multiple pipes in this agency, and if one of them gets clogged, it stops everybody else. And so we're eyeballing, and I showed them what our next hires are. We're eyeballing where are we going to be clogged? Where do we have to build a big pipe? And each one of those, like whenever it's a hiring a manager, it doesn't always feel like you're building a bigger pipe and you can't fit more revenue in it. But yeah, when I first added an operations manager and a head of accounts, I did both of those at the same time. And I was like, wow, this is costing me a lot of money. And then the business got way better and easier. It was amazing.
Yeah, and it's that, once again, you talked about at the beginning, it's that long-term view, right? It's not just a short sprint. It's let's take a look at a holistic. Where are we building this thing to? And then it gives you some hope to cling on to that it'll get to there.
So, because we're at 36 minutes, we've got a good run here. I don't go as long as Jared's podcast. But what is something like if somebody was saying, okay, I agree with the things that are said. I need to be thinking about building to sell. Or if they're at a stage where they're like, okay, I think I have a business that I'm ready to sell. Like, what would you recommend they do at that point?
For all of them, first thing I would do is get a valuation done. Most people have no clue what their business is worth.
Yeah.
They went to a trade show. Somebody got up on stage and said, I sold my $5 million company for $5 million. And they think my company is $2 million and it's worth $2 million kind of thing, or it's 10 million, it's worth 10 million. And so they have no clue. Or what's worse is the guy that gets on stage and said, I sold for a 20-time multiple, never once saying that he didn't get any cash at closing. He financed the whole thing. It's all an earn out. He'll never see any of the money, that kind of stuff that they just get up and brag and drive off in a Lamborghini. And so too often they have no clue what it's worth. And so my advice, we do it for free. There's other people that do them as well. Is where's the starting point? Where am I at today in relation to where I need to go to? Because you can't plan, I want to go to X if you have no clue where you're starting at. And so to me, the first thing is saying, here's what it's worth today. Then because I've had some people that we've had a talk like this, and they're like, oh, I just want to see my business worth. And I tell them the business worth, like, heck, it's worth that, sell it. I'm done. I don't need this. And others are like, what? Man, I thought it was worth 5 times that. I need to get fixing things here. Because too often, and I have a YouTube channel, and they're all just videos about buying and selling heating and air and plumbing companies. And my most watched video is one, it's called Your Baby's Ugly. And it's a joke because most business owners, the business is their baby, right? And I have to sit at the kitchen table with people who are 70 years old and say, you did it wrong. You should have asked these questions 20 years ago and didn't. And now this is what it's worth. Nobody wants to buy it. And so it's a horrible conversation. Yeah. So I do everything I can, and that's what we do, free valuations. We probably do, I don't know, 5 a week here, that are just, hey, we have a questionnaire on our website, fill this out. We'll tell you what it's worth, ballpark. If you want it more detailed, we'll do that too. But at least it gives people an idea of what it's worth. So then they can say, wow, I'm really far away. Or, wow, I'm really close and I just need to tweak a few things here and do that. So that would be the very first step, in my opinion.
So from my business coach, I learned this phrase, which is what doesn't get measured doesn't get improved. And so establishing a baseline sounds like the world's best starting point. So, okay. So tell us what your website is, where we can go and look for that assessment, as well as any other place that you want people to know. Go ahead, take this time to plug yourself.
So my website is my company name, Business Modification Group, businessmodificationgroup.com. I'm also active on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. Recently went on Instagram. So we're on all social media platforms. I have a YouTube channel, and so it's just me, Patrick Lange, at YouTube. Yeah, that's really it. I mean, we try to give a lot of information on social media, because people don't know who to ask, right? They don't want to. Who do you ask what your business is worth? Do you ask your competitor, or do you ask your friend? They don't know where to go, and so we try to put a bunch of information. I probably have 70 videos on YouTube, and when I first started, we were doing just heating and air, and now we do heating and air and plumbing. So the videos will say heating and air, but just take out heating and air and do plumbing if you're a plumber, or say electrician if you're an electrician, because it's the same thing, right? At the end of the day, they're very similar businesses who sell for very similar multiples, who have very similar traits of what needs to be done to grow them. And so that's what we talk about. And all my numbers are on there, my email's on there. Connect with me. I'm happy to answer any questions. I would rather people call me 10 times and say, what about this? What about that? Than me to meet them 10 years from now. And I say, wow, you did it wrong. It's not worth anything.
Yeah. That's the scary part. I've seen that happen. And essentially, I think of run your business as though it's your investment for your retirement, whatever, in the future, for your kids, whatever. Like, there's lots of reasons to do it. But the last thing you want to do is have that blindsidedness of, oh, I didn't actually build anything anybody wants. So.
And the sad part of that is I'm normally having that conversation when they're 65 years old.
Yeah.
So if you hear it when you're 35, well, go fix it, right? At the end of the day, go figure out what you need to do to get it right. At 70, do you have enough gas in the tank to say, now I'm going to change my whole business model, and I'm going to hire people and train people and market and grow and get online and add a CRM and do all these other things that you should have been doing 30 years ago and didn't know any better, right? You just went to work every day. And so that's why I do podcasts like this, that's why we write articles, that's why I'm on social media the way I am, so I can have less of those your baby's ugly conversations.
Yeah. Don't be surprised if we start telling clients, like, you should really just go see what you're worth. Like, go talk to Patrick.
Right. And some of those people, when it's time to retire and they want to sell, they'll call me, and I'm happy with that. But really, it's what I found my way of kind of giving back. It's they don't know who to ask, right? Mm-hmm. And I've been there. That's how I became a broker specializing in the trades, because I had a trades company that I wanted to sell, and I couldn't find out what it was even worth, or what was included, or what should I include, or there was nobody who could give me realistic information about that. So absolutely, I've been there. Use us. We do. I have some people every year. Hey, here's where we are this year. Can you update our valuation? Yep, send it over. We'll update it. And that way they're measuring it, and it's their scorecard for themselves.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thanks for having this conversation with me. I appreciate it. It's always interesting getting people who, well, I talk too much to marketers. Sometimes it's nice to talk to business brokers.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I had a great time, and hopefully, I know why we rambled along here. So hopefully your watchers or listeners get value out of it. And I had a great time.
All right, cool. Thanks again.
Let me tell you the tale of Tyler Williams, the marketing man. Born beneath the northern glow, through icy winds and endless snow, one dark night, disaster came, a plumbing failure, a world in shame. Searching online, no ads in sight, no plumber answered in the endless night. The pipes burst wide, the earth gave way, his home was gone, his mother lost. With fists clenched tight to the frozen sky, Tyler made a vow, a marketing cry. Plumbers shall rise, their name shall stand, I will forge their fate with my own hand. Plumbers shall rise, their name shall stand, I will forge their fate with my own hand. Tyler Williams, the marketing man, with cosmic power he built the plan. Fire in his eyes, campaigns in his hand, he builds lost plumbers across the land. From frozen away rise to city skies. Plumbers thrive where legends rise. He roamed alone through ice and stone. The Alaskan wilds became his home. He fought off bears with furious might and carved a shelter through the night. But cold winds whispered, his breath ran thin. He stumbled weak, his strength grew dim. Then through the storm a shadow tall, a mighty mammoth, a titan's call. I am Mark, the marketing mammoth. Tyler, your time has come. I will teach you the cosmic secrets of persuasion and advertising, ancient marketing magic lost to time. Through my wisdom you shall rise, and the world will always find a plumber in their time of need. Tyler Williams, the marketing man, born of the wild with a mammoth plan. He bends the stars, he shakes the sky. For plumbers lost, he lifts them high. With words like thunder, ads like fire, he turns their dreams into empires. No more shadows, no more doubt. With mammoth power, he pulls bills out. For 35 years through frost and fate, he studied with Mark, making marketing great. He grew 10 feet, his beard turned wild. With mammoth wisdom, no longer a child. His eyes burned green with northern light. His voice could shake the stars at night. Then Mark the mammoth raised his head, and to his pupil this is what he said. Tyler, you have mastered the ancient ways, the lost art of persuasion, the magic of marketing. Your time is now, the world is waiting. Plumbers live in darkness, but you shall be their light. Go forth, fly to their shops, make them known across the cosmos. Mark raised his tusks and split the sky. A portal opened, a world passed by. Through time, through space, a rift was torn, and Tyler Williams was reborn as the mythical, fabled, magical marketing man. Flies from shop to shop, lifting plumbers to the top. Through mammoth power, through ads so bright, he brings their business into the light. That was the tale of Tyler Williams, the marketing man.